Hello there, Rick McCraw from the McCraw Performance Group. Welcome to the first in a series focused on key takeaways from my team performance seminar, Giving In to Get Your Way. My seminar uses Eastern strategies and tactics gleaned from the Japanese martial art of Aikido, but applied in an interpersonal or business environment. The art of Aikido has become increasingly popular as people search for physical or spiritual paths to inner peace while also swimming in a sea of conflict. The style of Nihon Goshin Aikido originated in Japan, as did all styles of Aikido, and grew from Daitoru Aikijujutsu. While each Aikido style is certainly unique, they all follow the same basic philosophy: peace and inner harmony by allowing the practitioner to free themselves of fear and to balance and utilize energy. Japanese executives consider the corporate environment to be the new battlefield and have incorporated these samurai concepts and principles into their practice for many years. Being able to balance and use energy is a central factor in being able to prevail in a psychosocial interaction or conflict, or perhaps even a negotiation. So let's talk about power. It's my belief that many people feel powerless over the events in their lives, particularly today. I think this feeling of being powerless is driving anger and frustration in our culture. The perception of being invisible or at the mercy of some faceless entity drives feelings of frustration and sometimes I think the need to get even. A personal example I can share was when the housing bubble collapsed in 2008. As you recall, the predominant cause was high-risk subprime loans and the failure of mortgage-backed securities. This entire debacle was driven by super high-risk lending practices that were being used to keep the bubble full. The result was a massive overcorrection in lending practices by the banking industry to try to get things back on track. Well, this is where it impacted us personally. When the market collapsed, we were able to continue to pay our bills and continue to enjoy a good lifestyle. While we did see our property equity evaporate, we were not over-leveraged and was able to ride out the storm. Despite this, we saw our available credit arbitrarily reduced, and as a result of an increasing ratio of debt to available credit, our credit scores declined. Frankly, I was mad at the bank and felt powerless over the situation. Another example may be when you walk into a restaurant and there are 5 staff sitting at the kiosk and no one acknowledges you waiting to be seated. Or perhaps you're a patient in the hospital and you see staff walking and talking in the hallway even though you've pushed your call bell twice and nobody has responded. I think this is where the spiral towards conflict starts. You're expecting this treatment sometimes, and you walk through the door loaded for bear, as we say in the South. This is projection. The concept of projection works hand in hand as the other person often will reflect the attitude you project. Both can create a spiral that will escalate the conflict. To break out of the spiral, someone needs to stop fueling the fire. You can use the properties of projection to change the responses of others. Project the attitude you want to see in others, and frequently that's what you'll get back. This is where the concept of giving in to get your way applies. But to embrace this, I think we must dispel probably some traditional perceptions. For example, weak versus strong, hard versus soft, good versus bad. Weak and soft have a negative connotation in our business culture. This is also fueled by our ego and self-confidence or lack thereof. I suggest you focus on the outcome and not the need to be seen as right or vindicated. When dealt cards that are beyond our control, if you will focus on how you can pivot to make use of the new circumstances, rather than allowing the anger of being dealt the cards in the first place overtake your responses. Projection and reflection can also be used much to your advantage. If you add positive, disarming energy into the equation, then that's very often exactly what you'll get back. In a physical conflict, this equates to pulling if you're pushed or pushing if you're pulled, as opposed to just frank resistance. How does this apply to business? Well, I think folks often feel like if they had the power, things would be different. I would argue that power is not as essential as you getting what you need as you might think. No matter what your role is in an organization, there are limits and consequences of forced action. In my business roles, I have had a lot of power, but found in the end the best outcomes were achieved without the use of that power. In fact, almost every time, When power was used to force an outcome, it always left a mark on all involved. Let's talk about resistance met with resistance in the zero-sum game. Does the win-win even exist? The potential for either outcome, I think, always exists. It's the pathway to resolution that determines the outcome. What keeps us from seeking the win-win? I think there's some common things that will raise their head. The need to be seen as right. The last word. You feel like you must get the last word in. Or the very dysfunctional need to crush your adversary and make them rethink ever opposing you or trying to deal with you in the first place. One of the samurai precepts is to approach everything with a desperate effort. But I would argue that you don't want to create a desperate effort in whoever you're working with or negotiating with or whoever is on the other end of your interpersonal relationship. In Aikido, the goal is to take the will to fight out of your opponent, not to beat them into submission. Same goes for conflict. I'll be the first to admit that these principles are easy to talk about and much harder to put into place. Though I do believe that once you see the bigger strategy of getting what you need out of the interaction and avoid the common emotional pits where the derailment often begins, I think you'll see conflict, negotiation, and interpersonal interaction all will become a little bit easier. I hope you found this interesting. If you'd like to know more about our seminars and coaching, let me know via our website at www.mccrawlperformancegroup.org. Our next video will focus on the concept of the doctrine of least interest and how important this balance of power can be in any negotiation. Thanks for watching.